The end of the world is here, and it's up to Will Smith and a German shepherd to bring salvation to the human race. Released in 2007, I Am Legend sees a post-apocalyptic world through the eyes of Dr. Robert Neville, played by Will Smith, who is the last man standing in New York City when, after a new cure for cancer turns into a devastating virus, most of the world's population was wiped out, and those who survived the virus became Dark Seekers. Highly contagious, rabid zombie-like mutants who stay in the shadows at day but wreak havoc by night. Neville, along with his dog, scurry through the wreckage remains of New York City in order to find survivors, while also working in his lab to find a cure for the dead Seekers, while also dealing with his own devastating loneliness. So join with me today as we look into 10 amazing facts about I Am Legend, a movie that came out during the hype of the zombie revival craze of the 2000s. Which, although is somewhat let down by not so good CGI, is made up for by the charm and likability of Will Smith. Yeah, hi, this is 2025 Minty, interrupting this video I originally made in 2019. Now, I have to explain that often throughout this video, I'll be describing Will Smith as very likable and charismatic, because, well, that's because back then, he was. You have to remember this was pre-Chris Rock slap and I Love Pretty Girls Will Smith, at a time when he could do no wrong and absolutely everyone loved him. And you know, who knows, maybe one day in the future he'll return to that likable guy that he once was. Anyway, I just thought that I'd have to explain that, so on with the show.
Every single person that you or I has ever known is dead! Dead!
Number 10. The original book is about vampires. I Am Legend is based on the 1954 novel also called I Am Legend, which was written by science fiction writer Richard Matheson. Matheson had a long career in writing science fiction and horror stories, including episodes of The Twilight Zone and the novel Bid Time Return, along with its movie adaptation Somewhere in Time. And given the fact that the book was published in 1954 and the movie came out in 2007, naturally there are going to be differences. Unlike the movie where the disease is caused by biological outbreak, in the book the disease was caused by war, dust storms, and an increase in mosquitoes. The book also takes place in San Francisco, unlike the movie which is set in New York City. And the biggest difference is the disease themselves, where unlike the movie where they resemble modern day zombies, in the book they are pretty much vampires. So much so they don't have reflections, and Neville literally has to protect himself with garlic and crucifixes. Wow, imagine if the I Am Legend movie actually had scenes of Will Smith walking around with garlic. But jokes aside though, the unique thing about the I Am Legend book is that it took a scientific approach to mythical creatures. In this case, vampires. Number 9. Third I Am Legend adaptation. Although 2007's I Am Legend is the first movie to take on the novel's namesake, it is actually the third movie adaptation based on Richard Matheson's novel. The first was The Last Man on Earth, which was released in 1964 with Vincent Price starring as Robert Neville, whose character's name got changed to Robert Morgan. And just like the novel, we see the main character as the last man standing, where he must protect himself from a plague of vampires. Then in 1971, The Omega Man came out, starring Charlton Heston as the Neville character, where this time the plague was caused by biological chemical warfare, where the disease now resembled white-haired undead people who have a love for aviators. Also, the diseased in the Omega Man aren't rabid killers, but are actually intelligent and living within their own society, with them attacking those who aren't like them. I can't help but feel like the Omega Man explores a clashing of two ideologies, as opposed to being a post-apocalyptic horror movie. Number 8. The movie's production started in the mid-90s. I Am Legend has a long, drawn-out production which lasted for over 10 years. Although I Am Legend came out in 2007, Warner Brothers first got to work on the project in 1994, and as the 90s went on, Ridley Scott was hired to direct and Arnold Schwarzenegger was cast as Neville. However, confidence was lost in the project when Scott's last few films he had directed were flops, along with Schwarzenegger's last few films that he starred in, and even Warner Brothers were going through rough times at that stage. So both Scott and Schwarzenegger were no longer bankable. Schwarzenegger then became the movie's producer, and in 2002 was negotiating for Michael Bay to direct the movie and for Will Smith to star as the movie's lead. And yes, it was through Schwarzenegger that Smith got involved in the project. Bay and Schwarzenegger left the project, but Smith stayed on, and Batman Forever writer Akiva Goldsman came on board to write the script, and Francis Lawrence, who previously directed the supernatural comic book movie Constantine, was brought on board to direct. Number 7. The Search for the Last Man in New York. Throughout the early days of I Am Legend's production, several leading actors were considered for the main role of Dr. Robert Neville, before Will Smith swept up the role with his charisma. Actors considered for the pivotal part include Mel Gibson, Michael Douglas, and Tom Cruise. Till finally, Arnold Schwarzenegger landed the important part as mentioned, which of course led to the casting of Will Smith. And it seems that when Smith landed the role, he was very enthusiastic about it, as he felt the artistic value of I Am Legend could be up there with the likes of Gladiator and Forrest Gump. Now, whether or not I Am Legend holds up as a huge piece of artistic merit will be shown later on throughout time. But the fact that Smith was so into the role and the challenge it faced showed that he was fully committed to the film and went above and beyond with his performance. Number 6. The ball finally got rolling because of Hancock. I Am Legend's early days of production was constantly met with setbacks and delays and re-evaluations, till finally the project started to take form, all thanks to another Will Smith movie, Hancock. The comedy movie about an alcoholic, disgruntled superhero who turns his life around was set for filming with a 2007 release, but setbacks pushed Hancock to a 2008 release. So Overbrock Entertainment and Weed Road Pictures, whom were some of the companies that was producing both I Am Legend and Hancock, decided to do a switcheroony and bring forward the I Am Legend projects and to make the movie first, with it being released in Hancock's place. And then after that production, they would then get to work on Hancock. Just imagine if we lived in a world where Hancock came first and then I Am Legend. That would be a world exactly the same as the one we're living in now. Number 5. Batman v Superman Easter egg. Many people have noticed in a scene where the Neville character is walking around a destroyed and run-down New York City that there is a movie billboard for Batman vs Superman, very similar to the Batman v Superman logo that would be used for the actual movie 9 years later. This is because I Am Legend's writer and co-producer Akiva Goldsman had written a script for a Batman vs Superman movie, and the gag was when the movie was shown, the apocalypse in I Am Legend took place, so it was a sort of in-joke. Warner Brothers had planned to make a Batman vs Superman movie for years, and by 2007 it looked as though the movie was finally going to happen, with director Wolfgang Peterson directing. And going by the fact that the Superman Returns Superman logo was used, probably suggests it was going to be the Brandon Routh Superman set from that universe. However, the project didn't happen at that time and would eventually evolve into the 2016 movie, which at that stage was now part of the newly formed DCU. Speaking of Easter eggs, Faith No More's lead singer Mike Patton provided the growling and moaning noises of the Darkseekers, and bootleg DVD covers of the movie explains that Adam Sandler is simply remarkable in I Am Legend. Ah yes, without a doubt, I Am Legend is one of the finest Adam Sandler movies.
Oh, I want to touch the baby.
Number 4. Will Smith went all out to get himself prepared for his role. The role of Neville, the last man standing in New York who also has an immunity to the disease, was something of a challenge for Will Smith. It was a new kind of role for him, a more tragic and isolated one. A man who lost his wife and child, who lives with the sadness of his own loneliness and desire to cure the disease. In order to prepare himself for the role, Smith went above and beyond as he visited disease control centers and even met up with a former prisoner of war who was being held in solitary confinement in order to get a grasp of isolation. After all, most of the movie just follows Smith on his own, so he had to try and figure out the conflict of constantly being on his own. He also took inspiration from Tom Hanks's performance in Castaway, and I think his research helped, as he gives a captivating and heartbreaking performance. As for the movie's quiet but somber tone, well, director Francis Lawrence took inspiration from the movie The Piano, as he watched it one time with the volume on very low as not to wake his newborn son, where he realised having such a deep movie be presented in such a quiet manner was very powerful and effective. Number 3. Alternative ending. I Am Legend was released on November 14, 2007, and made $508 million on a $150 million budget, so it was a relatively commercial success. And the general critical consensus was that although Will Smith gives a great performance, the movie is somewhat let down with its use of CGI. However, since its release, a director's cut ending has surfaced, which, unlike the original ending where Neville sacrifices himself in order to defeat the leader of the Darkseekers so Anna and Ethan can escape the lab with the cure, in the alternative ending, Neville gives the leader of the Darkseekers the cure and the female seeker that he had been experimenting on, to which the leader flees with the cure, where Neville has the realization that in the eyes of the Darkseekers, he's actually the one who's the twisted monster, someone who had kidnapped a member of their group, where Neville then escapes with Anna and Ethan. That ending would have been a great twist, and definitely a more satisfying one, rather than just killing the main character off, as we would have seen him find the salvation that he's been looking for throughout the entire film. It's a shame that that wasn't the ending that they went with, but hey, that's just my opinion. Number 2. Switch to CGI. To me, I Am Legend's biggest letdown is the use of CGI for the zombie-like Darkseekers. I feel like they are just not rendered right and they look way too animated, and given that there is a huge build-up to see what they look like, when they finally show up, it's a major letdown as they look like they belong in a computer-animated movie as opposed to interacting with real-life characters. Well, sadly, originally the Darkseekers were going to be played by actors in prosthetic makeup, and a week's load of filming was done with the actors in costume, but director Francis Lawrence felt that they just didn't look convincing, so he opted to use CGI instead, which made the movie's production drag out even longer, as well as increasing the budget. The main alpha leader of the Darkseekers was modelled after actor Dash Mihawk. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that right, who also starred in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet and The Punisher Warzone. And I think it's such a shame that CGI was chosen over using real-life actors, as I Am Legend is a great movie, but it's let down by cartoonish-looking villains. Especially considering that just a few years earlier, 28 Days Later came out, which used real actors in makeup, and that looked great, as it was effectively scary and no doubt was made on a lower budget. Number 1. The sequel which never took off. As early as 2008, 1 year after the release of I Am Legend, there was plans for a prequel, which was to once again star Will Smith as Neville and focus on him surviving the early days of the disease and the apocalypse, and the events which led to the situation we see him at the start of I Am Legend. However, come 2011 and there was still no movie, to which the I Am Legend prequel was announced by its director Francis Lawrence as being unlikely to happen. Come 2012 and there was still interest by Warner Brothers to make a follow-up movie to I Am Legend, along with signing up its main star Will Smith. The closest a sequel/prequel has come to moving into production was in 2014, where Warner Brothers acquired a script called A Garden at the End of the World and felt that the script seemed familiar to I Am Legend and called for rewrites for the script to be merged into an I Am Legend related movie. But still nothing happened. And given that Will Smith is now much older, a prequel is probably out of the question. Finally, in 2022, a sequel was officially given the green light, a whole 15 years after the release of I Am Legend, and it was said to be a continuation of the story based on the alternative ending where Neville didn't die. The movie was to also star Michael B. Jordan, and Akiva Goldsman was also to return to pen the new script. But then, suddenly the project seemed to have just disappeared. It's almost as if something outrageous happened in Will Smith's real life that derailed the production. Okay, that's just speculation. And come 2024, it was announced that a sequel was still on the way and that Creed 2 director Stephen Caple Jr. was in talks to direct. But thus far, now nearly 20 years later, a sequel or any kind of continuation doesn't seem to be getting any closer or happening at all. So for now, a continuation of I Am Legend does seem unlikely, but who knows? In movies, anything is possible. I Am Legend is a testament to the acting talents of Will Smith, and the heart and soul and of course the humour that he puts into the movie. It's worth watching for him alone, as you really feel his pain and turmoil. To me, that's the greatest tragedy of I Am Legend. It's a pretty good film, but it could have been a standout movie had they not went with the CGI direction of the Darkseekers. That one choice of CGI got in the way and prevented it from being a brilliant movie in my book. But hey, it's still totally worth giving it a view, so I say check it out. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I'm a pretty tough guy when it comes to seeing murders in movies. Unless it's dogs, I just can't handle that. Alright, see ya!